Good morning. We're live on the Falcons Podcast on YouTube, but we want to be live on Facebook as well. So let's bring in our Facebook groups. We've got Atlanta Falcons on SI and Scott Kennedy Sports. Atlanta Falcons on SI. Lots of stories go through there. We got 5 or 6 stories to go through there today, a day. And then on Scott Kennedy Sports is where I do a lot of football videos and such. Do some Denver Broncos. I do put some Falcon stuff up there. Dan Campbell's press conferences today. So we spend some time doing that. Welcome in, everybody. This is the Falcons Podcast. It is the new era of the Atlanta Falcons. This is, to me, kind of the kickoff of the new beginning. Everything else is just kind of notepads, get to know each other type of thing. But the preseason starts in earnest today. It starts with players reporting today. They put the pads on this week. They go to work. They're fighting for jobs. There will be cuts. There will be promotions. There will be depth chart sets. Football starts now on July 24th. So welcome in, everybody. That's some of the things we're going to get into today. It will just be me today, so I need your help in the chat, hitting me with the questions, the kind of things so I know what you want to talk about. Some of the things I want to talk about are some of the things we've talked about before to a certain extent here and there, but I want to kind of focus on those because it is the beginning of the season as far as I'm concerned. So I want to get into some of the top storylines and some of the top position battles that go in. But we go live every Monday and Wednesday, and probably starting once the preseason games start, we'll probably go Fridays as well. We'll bring Fridays back, and definitely during the season. So I want to say we go live because we like having the conversation with y'all. So I want to say hello to some folks that have come in before we've even gotten started, and some that have trickled in. And make sure you hit that like or share button so we can get more Falcons fans and more people coming in as well. Red Swarm, he's coming. He says, good, wonderful Wednesday morning, Scott and Nick. Yeah, Nick's out climbing mountains. I'm not sure which one it is this time. I think it's Mount Whitney this time. But he's going with our friend Carl, who does Building the Broncos on Tuesday nights over on Mile High Huddle. And all our friends in the chat, that's all y'all. Finally, football is back. Rise up. It is back. Pads are going to be popping. Guys are going to be fighting for jobs. It is back. It's time. George Patterson was in early. He's got a question. And to me, this is one of the bigger storylines. One of the bigger questions is the personnel groupings. George asks, good morning, Scott and Nick. Do you think that going to the 3-4 on defense will allow for better sack results? Thanks for all you do. Well, thanks for being here, George. This, to me, is one of the storylines. I know the base defense that Raheem Morris runs, and he's brought in Jimmy Lake to run. The base is a 3-4. However, the strength of this team is not at outside linebacker. It's not at edge. It's interior defensive line, inside linebacker. Last year, we kind of saw that happen naturally, where Ryan Nielsen may have run a 3-4 more often in New Orleans, but he ended up running a 4 hybrid. And there's so much nickel package out there that I feel like there is no base defense anymore. And if that is a base, it's a nickel. It's, okay, we'll run base on first down, and then it's sub packages from there on out. But last year we saw 3 down linemen with Bud Dupree as a stand-up edge. So it was really 4-man front most of the time. The strength of this team this year is on the defensive line and at inside linebacker. It's not outside. It's not at edge. At edge, you've got a budding talent, and Arnold Ebiketie, who you feel good about, and your other starter's a journeyman. Is Lorenzo Carter a good, solid squad player, but not a 15+ million edge guy, outside linebacker that teams need, that you're hoping Ebiketie turns into, that you didn't draft the potential in the offseason, but you've got 7, 8 deep on the front now with Grady Jarrett coming back, David Onyemata, Taquan Graham, LaCale London. Then you drafted 4 guys that can be on the front. I just feel like we're going to be seeing more 4-man fronts with this personnel group. It makes sense. And the other part of this, the other storyline I want to look at here, is the use of your inside linebackers with the emergence of Dayton Landman last year. So you've got 2 pretty good ones, 3 pretty good ones, really, and then you've got a rookie that you really like, too, on the inside. You've got Caden Ellis, Troy Anderson, and Nate Landman. 3. If you're running a 3-4, that means one of those guys is not on the field. And frankly, I think if we just count the linebacker group, when we call the 4, instead of calling edge rushers, we'll just call them all linebackers. I think those 3 are 4 of your best linebackers. I really do. I think those 3, if I'm going to run 4, if I'm going to have 4 of them out there on the field, Ebiketti's probably going to be one. But I would find a way, and I think they will, where you've got Caden Ellis and Troy Anderson freelancing out there. And those guys were brought in. Caden Ellis especially was brought in because he's really good rushing the passer. So I think you might see him more outside at his edge or stack in the middle, but I think we might see more 3 inside linebacker fronts where they're not lined up inside. But that's the way I see it. The strength of this team for me is the big guys up front on the defense. Use them. There'll be a lot of rotation still. But one of the storylines for me, and one of the things I'm most interested in seeing, is how are they going to use Anderson, Landman, and Ellis? Because typically 2 linebackers play almost all of your snaps, all of them. If you look at defensive snap counts, your 2 inside linebackers play almost every snap. Your corner, and then your defensive backs play almost every snap. There's heavy rotation up front. So if I'm only running 2 guys, then I'm leaving somebody out. Either Nate Landman, Troy Anderson, Ellis is going to be out there. They're not playing. I don't think that happens, George. So that's one of the things I'm interested in seeing. Can they improve on the 42? We'll see. The 42 was double 42 sacks. They had 42 sacks last year. That was double the previous year, but still put them in the bottom third. That's how bad the pass rush has been. I think they went 18, which is almost statistically impossible to be that bad in 2021. 2022, I think they went to 21 sacks. And then 2023, they went up to 42 sacks. Ryan Nielsen did a good job of bringing a pressure from a lot of different ways because they got 42 sacks with nobody having more seven or more. Bud Dupree and Calais Campbell both had 6.5, and I think Ebiketie had 6. Can Ebiketie step up and be a double-digit guy? Yes, I believe he can. Can Grady Jarrett and David Onyemata come in and chip in between 6 to 8 this year? Yes, I think they can. Playing together will help. Keeping them fresh will help. Having some depth on the defensive line will help. And then you brought in Ellis to be a 10-sack guy. I think he had 7 sacks in 11 games with New Orleans when he was signed, but he was forced to play more of a true inside linebacker instead of a pass rusher last year after the injury of Troy Anderson. So a lot of this is be healthy. Be healthy, and then we'll see how that works out. Great question, George. Way to get us started today. Denver Luke. See you. Morning, Scott and Nick. Good morning. Right back at you. Chris Walker is here. Good morning, Scott, and everyone watching. That's all of y'all and everyone who watches after the fact. Leon's here. Camden Hill is here as well. He says, live chat gang. Good morning, Scott and Falcons family. That's all of y'all. Austin Fries, good to see you. Been a while since I watched live. Thoughts on the OT signing? So the Falcons did sign, what's his name? Julian Davenport. I edited that article yesterday, did some research on him over on Falcons SI, and he's a good this type of year signing, meaning you're not expecting to be able to grab a starter off the scrap heap this time of year. Let's see, how do we see 6'7", 320 pounds. Yeah, Julian Davenport. Good frame, obviously. What I do like, he's got some good experience too. He has been a starter in this league for the Dolphins, for the Texans, cup of coffee with the Colts. That's a good camp signing. Now, will he make the 53? Maybe, maybe not. But that's a guy who is going to come in and push for the 53, not just someone who's over there on the other field with the 3s and 4s, working out, trying to see if he can make a practice squad. But he can push. He can push to try and make this team. So Julian Davenport, if you want to read more about him, hit falconssi.com. Right side, it says colossal offensive tackle. 6'7". I just told you most of it about him right there. He's been in the league 6 years and has some good experience, good frame. 6'7", 320 pounds. That's a really, really good camp signing. If this was, you were signing him to be your starting offensive tackle, I'd be nervous because you don't find starting offensive tackles in July. But this is a good camp signing, Austin. Appreciate it. Michael Ranquillo, the sunrise. He is here. Good to see you, Michael. Thanks for being here. Says good morning, Scott, on the Falcons podcast. Good morning to you as well. Jordan Brown coming in. He says, good morning, Scott. What do you think Arthur Smith and the Steelers locker room talk is happening about week 1? I don't know. I think there's some of it. There will be. I think it's going to mean a lot more to Arthur Smith than it's going to mean to everybody else in Pittsburgh. It's just Pittsburgh isn't really thinking about the Falcons other than the fact that, hey, this is our first opponent. Arthur Smith just got there. You know, he hasn't built up a huge amount of loyalty where, oh, let's win this one for coach. You know, they don't. I hate that. I don't mean it quite to sound as harsh as it's going to, but the Pittsburgh Steelers don't really care about Arthur Smith yet. They hasn't built that trust, those relationships. He's their coach. What do I think they're not out there? Hey, they're just not out there. Let's win one for Arthur Smith. Now, I think there will be more animosity for Russell Wilson going back to Denver in week 2. I think that one will mean more to them. So there's a lot of really cool storylines with the Pittsburgh Steelers, some revenge games in there. I think the relationship with Aaron Rodgers and Nathaniel Hackett, when Sean Payton popped off about Nathaniel Hackett, I think that meant more to the Jets. The Arthur Smith coming back will mean a lot to Arthur Smith, and it will mean a lot to Falcons fans. It'll mean more to Falcons fans to beat Arthur Smith than it would the Pittsburgh Steelers getting some revenge game against the Atlanta Falcons. That's my thoughts on it. Interested in hearing yours. John Harrell says, good morning, guys. Good morning. Good morning to you as well. Chris says, anything you're looking for in regards to special teams in training camp? Chris, I'll be honest, I haven't watched a single kickoff return with the new rules. Not a one. I haven't watched a snap of the United Football League, the UFL. So I'll be interested to see how it goes, and then I can start thinking, okay, this would be the way it works. I'm going to learn about it organically as it goes. What I'm looking for personnel-wise, though, is does Avery Williams make this team? Avery Williams is a really, really good punt returner. That's where it kind of ends for him as a NFL player. Ray McLeod is a really good special teams guy, returner. He's also capable of making top 4 wide receiver on this team. I don't think Avery Williams can make this team as a position player. So if Ray McLeod ends up taking kick return duties, special teams duties, punt return duties, can Avery Williams make this team as just a return man coming off an injury? That's one of the things I'm looking for, Chris, because he's not going to be one of the top 3 running backs this year. That's where he got his time. He was so bad as a defensive back that they moved him to running back after his second year. And he's not going to be a running back. Not going to move him back to defensive back. He can't play there. So slot receiver, there's a lot more depth that Avery Williams cannot make this team as a position player. So can he make it as just a special teams guy, again, who can maybe chip in on depth somewhere else? We will see. Ray McLeod can be that guy. Yes, you need 2 kickoff return guys. 2 guys back for kickoff returns, I guess. But who can that be? Does that have to be Avery Williams? Do you bring him? Does he make this team just for that? We'll see. That's one of the things I'm watching as well. Wide receiver. Okay, let's get into this real quick. Position battles. Let's start on offense. Okay, done. I honestly think the offense is done. I think the offense positions are done. Who's it going to be? Who's the number 2 wide receiver? It's going to be Darnell Mooney. So for me, it just depends on how are they going to line up and how are they going to call 11 versus 12 personnel. Nick and I talked about this last week about how the Atlanta Falcons were the number 1 team in 12 personnel, meaning 2 tight ends on the field. Well, Kyle Pitts lined up 15% of the time as an inline tight end in his career. Last year, I think it was just 15%. I think it's like 20% in his career. 15% with his hand down in the rubber pellets. That's it. Everything else was either slot or out wide. He spent more time out wide on the boundary as an X or a Z, way out wide at wide receiver, not even the slot, than he did as a tight end. Yet they call that 12 personnel because Kyle Pitts is a tight end. Well, if you're lining up at wide receiver, you're not a tight end. You're a wide receiver. So how do they line up? Because Charlie Warner can be the blocker that the Falcons haven't had. I said it's ironic that the Falcons lead the league in 12 personnel, yet they don't have a tight end on the field that can block. Jonnu Smith was a poor blocker. Kyle Pitts is a poor blocker. Michael Pruitt is a poor blocker. Charlie Warner is a good blocker. So if Kyle Pitts is on the field with Charlie Warner, whether you want to call that slot 12 personnel or whatnot, if your packages of your four wide receivers are Drake London, I think Darnell Mooney's number 2, Charlie Warner, and Kyle Pitts, you're done. You're done. Because your everything else is set. Your 5 offensive linemen, there's no camp battles at offensive line this year. Jake Matthews, left guard, Matthew Bergeron, center, Drew Dahlman, right guard, Chris Lindstrom, right tackle, Caleb McGarry, quarterback, Kirk Cousins, running back, Bijan Robinson. There it goes. You're done. There aren't any camp battles. Camp battles right now are slot receiver if Charlie Warner's not on the field. Now, where do you put that in? I think that comes in Ray McLeod, Kadero Hodge is in there, and Darnell Mooney is in there. So you've got a battle at slot receiver is just about the only camp battle I see where it's not going to be one of those first 11 that we just mentioned. You're done. It's boring, but that's not a bad problem to have. The battles are on defense. There's several camp battles and storylines on defense. So for me, offensive storylines is the Falcons didn't run 12 personnel last year. They ran Kyle Pitts as a wide receiver. What do they do this year? Does Kyle Pitts play more tight end where he's going to be asked to be blocking more, a more well-rounded tight end this year, and you've got a true slot receiver out there, a true number 3 wide receiver, or is it going to be the same thing? You just have a better blocker in Charlie Warner than you did in Jonnu Smith or Michael Pruitt. That, to me, will be one of the more interesting things. And then the rotation, obviously, of how you bring guys in. How much are you going to use Bijan Robinson versus Tyler Algier? Tyler Algier is really good. Bijan Robinson's touches were hit and miss. The guy still ended up with 1,500 yards from scrimmage, top 10 in the NFL. He had a good season. And people, if you ask somebody that talks about, if you ask somebody from the outside about Bijan Robinson, and I did this, I was at a wedding last week, and they're like, oh, they didn't use him. I'm like, okay, where do you think he finished from scrimmage? And he's like, well, since you're asking me, I'm not sure. 20? I'm like, 10. He finished top 10 last year. Bijan Robinson had a good season. The expectations are so nuclear that he didn't score a lot of touchdowns. That's part of the problem. Fantasy people see that he wasn't one of the top fantasy running backs because he didn't score a ton of touchdowns. Get him in the end zone, get him the ball in ways where he can be more dynamic. I think his yards after contact or whatever, making guys miss, whatever one of those advanced stats were, was just off the charts. Yards gained after being hit behind the line of scrimmage, that getting more and more efficiency out of Bijan Robinson. So he could end up with 1,500 yards from scrimmage. If he does, let's get higher average per carry and get him in the end zone more often. That's one of the things about Bijan Robinson and his use is he wasn't scoring. It's been the knock on Kyle Pitts, it's been the knock on Drake London, goes back to the knock on Julio Jones. Let's get some touchdowns. Let's get some touchdowns in there. Kyle Schilling, good to see you. This is definitely one of the camp battles we're looking at. Who do you think will start at safety, DeMarco Hellams or Richie Grant? And if we start with Grant, do you think it's just a matter of time before Hellams takes the job? The number one is done. Jesse Bates he's written in Sharpie. AJ Terrell is written in Sharpie. I think Clark Phillips you're pretty close there as one of the other ones. DeMarco Hellams took Richie Grant's job last year. He was the starter the last quarter of the season. Richie Grant had a poor season. He didn't play as a rookie. He was okay as a second-year guy. He was poor as a third-year guy. And now with a fourth-year contract as a second-round pick, he's due to make about $3.8 million against only $800,000 dead cap. Richie Grant getting cut saves this team $3 million. Richie Grant has not played well. He's been spoken of highly coming into camp by Raheem Morris. I think he's fighting for a job. I think he's fighting not just for a job. I think he's fighting for a spot on this team. Again, you guys hear me talk a lot about the WAR stat in baseball that I really like: wins against replacement. How good are you compared to the average player? Richie's salary would be pretty high for a safety at $4 million, and his WAR would be negative. Let me see where he. Let's see what PFF said about him. The eyeball test was he was poor. At safety, if I look at safeties from last year, Richie Grant, I'm probably going to have to go to the second row because he's not there. If I start at the very bottom and work my way up, he was 89th out of 95 safeties. So he is a negative WAR. He's got talent. You can't really say it's been a coaching problem. Dean Pease is a good coach. Ryan Nielsen's a good coach. Jerry Gray's a good coach. So I think it's DeMarco Hellams, Kyle, unless they go and sign Justin Simmons here in the next 2 weeks. I think DeMarco Hellams is your starter at safety. He finished it last year. I think he starts it this year. And I think Grant is going to be a 53 bubble guy. I think he's got to worry a little bit about his position with the Falcons. Coach coming in. Appreciate breaking the ice on the super chats. He says, "Morning, fam. Scott, bat to your head. Do the Falcons make the playoffs?" That's violent. I guess you didn't want to say the other one that people normally say, though, with that phrase. Do the Falcons make the playoffs? Have a great week or weekend? Yes, the Falcons make the playoffs this year. That they didn't last year got a lot of people fired, lost a lot of jobs. Kirk Cousins, I think this is a playoff team with Michael Penix at quarterback. Going back to the allocation of resources, I think this is a playoff team with a rookie quarterback and a new play caller with everything else in place. If you then put that $100 million into the defense, I think they're definitely a playoff team. I think you could have done it with a rookie quarterback this year and then built for the future. That's neither here nor there. Yes, Kirk Cousins is a really good NFL quarterback. He looks to be healthy. He will have a settling in period. And this is another storyline. The toughest games on the schedule are in the first quarter of the season. So they could get off to a slow start. How do people react if Kirk Cousins is struggling? Pittsburgh Steelers defense is freaking good. It's really good. Kansas City's on the schedule. I think Tampa Bay is early. Not positive on that, but I remember it's like, they only play like 4 playoff teams and 3 of them in the first 5 games. They could get off to a slow start. What is the reaction? Is, okay, we expected a slow start, breaking in a new coach, new quarterback, new coordinator, tough games. Or do the howls start coming for Michael Penix? We'll see. Hopefully, for Falcons fans, you don't have to worry about it. Go out and take care of business, win games. People are thrilled that the way things are going. But if there's some adversity, and face it, folks, it's the Atlanta Falcons. It's Atlanta sports. What fun would it be if there weren't some adversity? That we'll see how the reaction goes if the Falcons get off to a 2-3 start. I think they could start 2-3 and still win 10 or 11 games. So I'm not going to, as long as I see competency out there and reasons for, okay, they look like a competent football team where you can see what the plan is, what they're trying to do. I'm not going to panic over a 2-2 start. I think you can go 2-2, 2-3, and still win 10, 11 games on this. So yes, coach, I do believe the Atlanta Falcons are making the playoffs this year. Mike Harvey coming in, he says, do they have 2-a-days anymore in pads? I don't think so. I think they just go longer. They go usually about 3 hours. But I don't know that they do 2-a-days out there. They don't high school anymore. That they just stay out there longer as opposed to going in and coming back out. So I don't think they have double sessions, split sessions, but I'm not 100% sure on that one, Mike. My initial guess would be no, but I am not 100% sure. Keith and Ellen Johnson always coming with the stars. Appreciate you breaking the ice over there on Facebook. Good morning, Scott. Who's our starting cornerback opposite Terrell? Another position battle, but I think this one is just about set in slate. It's not quite Sharpie. It's not AJ Terrell, Jesse Bates, but I think your other corner over there is Clark Phillips. I love Clark Phillips. Loved him last year. I think he's kind of a mini version, kind of a Honey Badger light. I think Tyrann is a better player, was a better player in college, but I think he's got a similar type of impact where he doesn't test all that great. He's not all that big. He's just a phenomenally instinctive football player. I'd still like to see the Falcons get another corner on the outside and let Clark Phillips come inside and let him freelance a little bit more and use those instincts almost like a nickel back, yes, but almost like a third safety. Where you see guys peel off of coverage. I'd like his eyes in the backfield a little bit more than you'll be able to do on the outside. I want him to read the quarterback, to read the plays, because he is so instinctive as a player, but he's not I think NFL cornerbacks are some of the best athletes in the world, period, along with pick your position shooting guards, power forwards in the NBA. But cornerbacks are the most athletic guys on the field in football for some of the most athletic people in the world. And he's not a plus athlete for the cornerback position. He's average at best. He is a plus football player, instinctive. Those guys typically you want to move inside. But I think the cornerback moving inside opposite Terrell, not inside, lining up opposite Terrell is going to be Clark Phillips. So there's one of your position battles, and I think that one is almost won. Who's going to be the nickel is also one of the position battles that comes in. And right now, I think D. Alford is probably your leader in the clubhouse. With Mike Hughes, has been getting some pretty good praise, a former first-round draft pick. Didn't play great last year, but didn't play poorly. But I think that's the nickel spot. And again, we talked about the top of the show lining up your how are you going to line up your front seven? A lot of it could end up being a front six because you're going to be playing a base nickel half the time anyway. Your nickel is almost a starter. They get starter snaps. So you're almost talking there. That's going to be where I'm a little surprised the Falcons didn't add was cornerback safety. They might feel good about Helms, fine, but I still think they're really, really light in the secondary. You start talking about the players that are there, and you're like, okay, if I'm going out there in a nickel package and I've got Clark Phillips, AJ Terrell, DeMarco Helms, Jesse Bates, and D. Alford, there's 5. Okay, that's solid. Mike Hughes is one of the backups. Kevin King is one of the backups. Antonio Hamilton, one of the backups. I'm not quite as sure about that, but what about an injury? You need 7 corners on a team. And I'm not positive that the Falcons go 4 deep at cornerback. So corner makes me a little bit nervous still. Would like to see a little bit more of an investment. And I think it's definitely a place to watch. Right now, every team's got 90 players. They cut down to 53. So what's that? 37. Was my math right on that one? 37 times 32 is what? 37 times 32 is not 23, Scott. Times 32 is 1,184. In the next 6 weeks, 1,200 players will be available. So I'm keeping an eye on defensive backs still. we'll see about edge rushers and stuff, and everybody's always looking for linemen. But I would be pretty surprised if we don't have another signing in the secondary come September 1st, or let's say after the 53s by week 1. I'll be pretty damn surprised if the Falcons don't sign at least one more player in the secondary. Good question. Let me see here. John Robert talking about Mooney may be a wide receiver number 2, but I think Pitts will get targeted more. Yeah, I think targets. If I take running back out of the equation, hell, Bijan Robinson might lead the team in targets. If I take running back out of the equation, I think Drake London leads this team in targets. I think Kyle Pitts is number 2. And then I think that's how it should be. And then I think there'll be a drop-off a little bit to Mooney. So order of, not targets, but order of weapons. This team runs through Bijan Robinson. That he's going to get the most touches. He should get 20 touches a game over the course of the year. And I think Drake London, number 2, Kyle Pitts, number 3. Those are the order of your weapons on there. Edward Brown. Good morning, Scott. What's the latest news on Justin Simmons? Did he sign with anyone yet? Justin's still out there. We'll see, but we'll see the reason why. I think he's probably already got a deal. He's just waiting for camp. If I'm a 31-year-old all-pro safety, I think he enjoyed his summer. I think he enjoyed taking some time off. I don't need to go to OTAs. They're optional anyway. I don't need to go to mini camp. I think Justin Simmons will end up being in someone's camp here pretty soon. And it wouldn't surprise me if he already has a deal done somewhere. What he ends up with, as far as, I heard the guy saying on Mile High Huddle last night, talking, 11, 12 million. I don't see that. I think he's going to be in the 7 million range, which if the Falcons wanted to come up with $7 million on a 1-year rental with Justin Simmons, they probably could. But as Justin Simmons, would he want to come to Atlanta? What was the word before? It was like Philadelphia Eagles or somewhere in there. So we'll see. But Justin Simmons is still out there. Todd Unstendorf, good morning. Oh, and he answered it a little bit. But he said, Justin Simmons' previous per year pay was $15 million. Yeah, he'll be lucky to get half that this year on a new deal. It's just look at the safety market. If your name wasn't Antonio Winfield, there was a flood of those guys. The market, there was more supply than there was demand. So I think Justin Simmons will be somewhere in the 7.5, 8 range when he ends up signing. Jay Gribben, I hit on this. Good to see you, Jay. He says, what do you think the record will be this year? 10-7, 11-6. I think that's where it ends up finishing. Would be my guess. You look at if you remember, some of y'all have been with me for a long time. You remember the doom and gloom I was preaching in 2022. I'm like, guys, this is a team that could be 2-15. And yes, they were only favored in 2 games. But you look at the schedule, I think they're only underdogs in 2 games this year. So Pittsburgh Steelers here, actually, I can tell you, I can just look up the ESPN keeps the betting lines. The betting lines out there. I'm trying to do this here. Stats team on their schedules, but I bet the Falcons are underdogs on maybe 2 games this year. So schedule, let me see here if it shows tickets as low as I think I'd have to click on every single one of them. But you got Pittsburgh at Philadelphia. You'll be an underdog at Philly. You'll probably be an underdog Kansas City. And this is where we mentioned the first 5 games are arguably your hardest, 4 of your hardest games. Pittsburgh, Philly. At Philly, you'll be an underdog there. Kansas City, you'll probably be an underdog there. New Orleans at home. Tampa Bay at home, you should be favorites. You'll probably be favored at Carolina. Seattle at home, favorites. At Tampa Bay would be a push-ish starting. Dallas at home would be close. At New Orleans, at Denver, favored at least one of those 2. Rams at home, coming off the bye week, will be really close. At Minnesota, at Vegas, New York, Washington, Carolina. This was ranked the 32nd schedule again, and it's a lot harder than it was last year as far as I'm concerned. That's how easy it was last year. So, I think it's a tougher schedule, but I think the record 10-7 still makes sense for me. I like that one. Bucks Rays Bolts out watching practice now. Good for you. Hope you're having a good time. 45 days Steelers Nation from Australia. Welcome in. Good to see you. Says 46 days. When you're in your teens and 20s, that could seem like a long time. I can hold my breath for 46 days now. Blink twice and 2 months goes by as you get older. Kirk at practice. Let me see some of the other questions that have come in here. Pentax Productions. He says, do you think Pitts can become more of a complete tight end when it comes to blocking like George Kittle? I think he made improvements there. I think he just has to not be awful. I mean, he's big enough to get in guys' ways. I don't expect him to take on – you remember the joke that Cam Jordan was talking about, he doesn't want to come in here and block me, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah, you don't want to get out there and try and cover him either. Cam plays his – I think Cam's actually a really good dude. He plays his role well of a villain. I think you see some of the interactions he has with Matt Ryan. There's no real animosity there. He's more like a WWE character. But you don't draft this isn't against you, Pentax Productions, but Kyle Pitts wasn't drafted to block. He just wasn't. Those are the guys that you bring in to block are league minimum guys that you get off the scrap heap and sign for 1 year league minimum deals. Those are your blockers. He was there to go for 1,200 yards and 10 touchdowns. So getting him back to there is how Kyle Pitts is going to be judged. Can he be more of a complete tight end? Yes, he can do a better job blocking. He needs to do a better job blocking. He can do a better job blocking, and he is still 23 years old, I believe. I think he turns 24 in September, maybe even October. He turns 24. Fourth year in the league, he's still 23 years old. Took his first snap when he was 20. Played his first 4 games, I think, when he was 20 years old. So he's got time to hone his technique and get better and get a little bit more physical as he turns into he was a man-child, but, now he's got time to turn into one of those grown-ass men type guys. Let me see here. John Roberts says Bijan will be used better. Yeah, I think so too. And I knew you'd spelled it wrong. That's okay. We get it. Bucks play the Falcons week 5. Yes, they do. And, and Brian says, I think a shaky start is more possible than not. Again, if I'm going just realistically, if I'm thinking I've got a new quarterback coming off of an injury, I've got a new coach, I've got a first-time offensive coordinator, that would typically mean, okay, we expect this team to maybe start a little slow and get better as the season goes on. Couple that with, again, your schedule starting off as Pittsburgh, playoff team, Philadelphia, playoff team, Kansas City, playoff team. New Orleans, never an easy game. Tampa Bay has won the division 3 or 4 times in a row. Those are your first 5 games. Those are 5 of your hardest games. So, yeah, a 2-3 start, and this team could still win 10. So a slow start shouldn't be completely unexpected. Would it be great if they came out on fire? This team was just dying to be turned loose? Yes. Should we be surprised if it doesn't happen that way? No, I don't think so. Let me see here as I'm coming down the chat a little bit. Chris says our depth across the board is so much better than it was at the start of the 2021 season. Chris, I remember going through 2021 and thinking there's like maybe 5 guys that are, again, of those war players, wins against replacement, that are average or better NFL players. There might be 5 on the entire starting 22. And it was like Grady Jarrett, AJ Terrell. I think I even counted Deion Jones back then. Jake Matthews and Chris Lindstrom. That might have been it. Matt Ryan was still, I think, an average guy. That might have been it. Caleb McGarry was out there, terrible. I don't remember who was it. Was it Hennessy playing center? He was okay. Left guard was that was Jalen Mayfield, left guard that year. I can't help it. Just poor Jalen Mayfield. He was so bad. Again, I think he was 20 also, got thrown to the Wolves, he had 18 starts in college, had never played guard, and ends up starting 16 games for the Atlanta Falcons in 2021. Good Lord. You bring in Eric Harris, God bless him, and You have Steven Means at edge with Ade Ogundeji starting, a rookie Taquan Graham doing the best he can. That 2021 team was that they won 7 games was a spectacular coaching job. Keep it close, play suffer ball, try and limit the possessions for both teams, and see if you can kick a field goal. See if Matt Ryan can get you close at the end and get it. The receivers. You had Kyle Pitts. Calvin Ridley went AWOL middle of the season. He wasn't really playing very well while he was there. I think he only had a couple hundred yards in his first 5-6 games before he went AWOL. Russell Gage got a nice contract out of that one. So, yes, very it's eons better than 2021, and it was last year too. The team was much better than I may have mixed up some of my 2022 people in there, but the 2022 team was, it was tough. My Swanker says, do you think there's a possibility we trade AJ Terrell? The possibility, yes. Likelihood, no. There's always the possibility, always that exists for, until you see somebody with a massive $100 million dead cap hit. Then you don't even trade those because no one will trade for a player that has a contract like that, right, Russell Wilson? You'll wait until anyway. No, there's a possibility, yes. Likelihood, no. I think AJ Terrell is going to be an Atlanta Falcon. We've gotten every impression in the world that AJ likes being in Atlanta, and he's got a lot of fans in the building, from Arthur Blank all the way down. Moving down the line to people who are going to be writing and approving that check in his playing time. I think AJ Terrell will sign. And we were looking at some of the contract numbers recently, and there hasn't been a market resetting cornerback signing in a couple of years. The highest paid guys have been on their contracts for a couple of years. AJ is not going to reset the market. I think he's going to be somewhere in the probably 17 million range is what he ends up getting on an average contract, which on a multi-year deal will actually lower his cap hit in the first year from his 5th-year option. I don't think he's played at a top 3 level. Pat Surtain is going to be the guy that resets the market. I think Pat Surtain for the Denver Broncos is going to be a $25 million a year corner and will be the highest paid corner in the league next year. He's got 2 years left on his deal. 4th year and then a 5th-year option. I think he came in the class after AJ. He came in with Kyle. That I think Pat Surtain is the guy that resets the market. I think AJ ends up a top 10 paid at cornerback, but in that 7, 8, 9 range, not top 3. Let me see here on this one. Want to scroll down here a little bit. Keith says, who do you think gives the Falcons the biggest challenge to winning the NFC South? I'm interested to hear what y'all think. I think this one's pretty easy for me. The answer is Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay won it last year. They've won it the previous couple of years. They're bringing back most of their team that played well last year. They finished the season really strongly. Let me see if I can't bring that up. But including manhandling the Philadelphia Eagles, who were playing horribly, to finish the season. But Tampa Bay in 2023, schedule and results. I mean, they finished 9-8. It doesn't sound all that impressive, but they finished well, and they beat some decent teams. So they finished winning 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of their last 7 games. It started by eking by the Panthers and Falcons, and then they beat the Green Bay Packers, who everybody adores. They beat Jacksonville. They lost to the Saints, and they beat the Panthers. Okay, so maybe it wasn't that impressive. But then they manhandled the Eagles in the playoffs. So they won 6 out of their last 7 games, played really well. We were ready to write them off for dead after the Falcons beat them down in Tampa Bay. And then they lost to Buffalo, and then they lost to Houston. And they turned it around. So I think the answer for that one is definitely the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Interested to see what y'all think. I have a feeling Bucks Rays Bolts probably thinks that the answer to that question is Tampa Bay. John Roberts says, "What are your thoughts about Casey Washington?" I don't have too many. He's a rookie out of Illinois who's gotten some love in camp, but again, camp so far has been shorts and t-shirts. There haven't been any pads yet. Got a battlefield promotion, which you always like to see. He was on with the 3s and 4s and got to move up with the 1s and 2s. There's not a ton of depth here at wide receiver for the Falcons. You go Drake London, Darnell Mooney, and then Rondale Moore, who was traded for with Desmond Ridder, Ray McLeod, Kadero Hodge, Casey Washington, Chris Blair, Josh Ali, Austin Mack. So if you're keeping 5-6 receivers, there's a spot for him on this team, especially if he's going to be a special teams demon, which I think he's going to have to do. Going back to that question at the top of the hour, can Avery Williams make this team as just a special teams guy? I'm not sure. Casey Washington can make this team as a 4th, 5th wide receiver and a special teams guy. Let's see. Oblivion Empire, want to say hello. He says, I made it. Good to see you. And Keith, glad to see you in here as well. He says he's happy we didn't have to wait till Friday. Not going to do another episode on Friday. No Broncos for breakfast on next one. Nick's gone. I'm not going to carry 2 shows in a row by myself. My voice won't last that long. It's already starting to give out. So Michael Tran has a great question here. He says, any chance the Falcons trade with the Jets for a disgruntled Hassan Reddick? That'd be nice, wouldn't it? Anybody in there, I'm not an expert on everything by any stretch of the imagination. Someone tell me why the Falcons would be better, should stay away from Hassan Reddick. 75.2 pass rush grade last year. His pass rush was 75.2 player grade last year. What were his overall stats for he's pretty good pass rusher. Sacks, pretty good. Come on, Scott. I think he's played for, I don't think he's got the Yannick Ngakoue thing going, who can't seem to get a job. But 2020 with Arizona, 12.5 sacks, 11 with Carolina in 2021, 16 with Philly, and when they had like 70 in 2022, and then 11 with Philly again last year. He's 29 years old, so I still feel pretty good about his ability to play at that level. That's kind of the prime for those edge guys, 27 to 32, 31 years old, that you could still probably get a couple good years out of him. I don't know why he's holding out. Is it money related, contract related, that he's doesn't get his chances there? Eric says, do we have the money? You can find the money. There's money in there to be had where you can move some guys around. If you gave an extension to just AJ Terrell right now, you could lower his cap number. Let me see. Where's my spot rack here? You could lower his cap number. AJ Terrell's cap number right now is 12.5. You could probably find $7-8 million just by giving him an extension. There's money to be had. You look at dead cap hits. Grady Jarrett, you could restructure and find some extra money there. Caleb McGarry's pretty well set. There's not a ton of guys in here that have big underwater contracts. Let's see. You could probably find some extra money with Jesse Bates. His deal looks like a bargain right now. Let's see. So there's not a ton of. We're out from under almost all of the bad contracts. The last big one, I guess, that is still out there. Kirk Cousins, yes, and then one more year this year of Jake Matthews. But I could find some money with AJ Terrell and Grady Jarrett with some easy restructures if I wanted to. And remember, like I said at the top of the show, it's $3 million from Richie Grant if you moved on that one. James asks, if you're the GM, would you trade for Jordan Addison? Vikings are unhappy with the way he operates a motor vehicle. Not sure you need that in Atlanta either. This is one of the things that if you watch this show, you probably know, but the Vikings are paying Kirk Cousins more this year via dead cap money than the Falcons are this year. I think they're at $28 million. The Falcons are at 25. With a second-year first-round draft pick, James, he might carry a significant dead cap. All that money is guaranteed, so maybe that comes with if you find the trade and someone picks up the contract. But no, I'm not completely interested in Jordan Addison. The next significant investment that this team needs to make needs to be on defense. It just has to be. As far as significant, I'm talking first round draft picks, $10+ million in salary needs to be on defense. I'm pleased with the long-term thinking on the defensive line. Again, the Falcons didn't necessarily draft a single starter this year. There's not one, barring injuries, that if you look at the two deep, that is expected to start this year. That's odd. That doesn't happen very often. But the time it takes for a grown man position in the interior lines, those are 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years down the line. So that's fine. You've built for the future with this draft. You still need that fire-breathing pass rusher. You've got to try and find him somehow. So they had a different guy I was interested in last year. Where did he sign? Danielle Hunter. He signed in Texas somewhere. Did he sign with the Texans? I think he ended up signing with the Texans. So, no, I'm not overly interested in Jordan Addison. I'm not overly interested in Brandon Ayuk. I feel like the weapons, again, we started off the show talking about one of the storylines on this team, position battles on offense. You're done. There aren't any. Slot receiver. That's it. That's it. Slot receiver. You're done. Everything else is pretty well set. Now it's time to go for the defense. The defense. So I'm going across the top. Ebiketti's a pro. He's got a spot, but is he your number one? Lorenzo Carter's a journeyman. You're good on the interior line. Let's go back. I think you're actually pretty good at linebacker. There's position battles there, depending on how you use them, between Nate Landeman and Troy Anderson. Caden Ellis is going to be a starter. The backside, Clark Phillips is in somewhere, whether he's your nickel or your long-term outside guy. I think he's going to be a starter for this team for a while. AJ Terrell, Jesse Bates, they're there. Second safety, and then your fifth defensive back, whether he's your starting corner or starting nickel, those need to be addressed. Pass rush. Lorenzo Carter is a squad guy. I like him on the team. Don't necessarily like him as a starter. That's where the next investment has to go for this team. So, on that note, I am just about to get out of here. Keith says, I'll be honest, for some reason I feel the Saints will be more competitive this year. Maybe it's the voodoo down there in New Orleans. Maybe it's my Atlanta bias. But between the salary cap, the Derek Carr struggles, the questions around Dennis Allen, I feel like the Saints are just ready to implode. Like, the Saints are ready to have their 2-15, let's get our number one pick and get our quarterback type of year. Might not be this year, but you cannot keep playing the salary cap game with players because they get older and those bills come due. I just think that they are, if it's not this year, it's coming. They're on the downward track. Are they going to make one more run at it this year? Maybe. Maybe. Rex, Scott, would you say this is the best O-line depth we've had in some time? Depth is hard to say. I feel good about the starting five. I don't know that anybody has good offensive line depth, to be honest with you. I feel really good about the starting five. I think this is one of the best starting fives in the NFL. Chris Lindstrom still doesn't get the appreciation he deserves. I'll be interested to see he came in at like 88 on the top 100 list. I'll be interested to see, if he's 88, where's Zach Martin? Where's Quentin Nelson? Is he even on the top 100? Where's Joel Bentonio? Where is he on the top 100? Because if whatever tier Zach Martin is in, that's where Chris Lindstrom should be. I'm not saying he should be ahead of him, but if Zach Martin's 20, then Chris Lindstrom needs to be in the 20s. That's where he needs to be. Still a little bit worried about Caleb McGarry. He had his best pass rush grade last year, believe it or not. Charlie Warner will help him. They'll use him. He's a good blocking. Balance on offense will help him. It's not always how predictable were the Atlanta Falcons in run-pass situations last year. They weren't hard to figure out. And it was always second and long, third and long. So didn't do him any favor. The balance should help. Let me see here. I think we're just about to get out of here. Just about done. But yeah, as Chris says, until he proves otherwise, McGarry's pass protection will be a concern. It is. It definitely is. That's definitely one of the storylines coming in. You can get out from under his contract this year. If McGarry struggles in this system, he will not be an Atlanta Falcon in 2025. His contract will either be redone. We talk about money that you can have, money that's available, and for next year, Caleb McGarry, his numbers go to let me see, 2025, his base signing, his cap hit is 14.5. His dead cap drops to 4. So you save $10 million moving on from Caleb McGarry. If he plays well, he could get an extension. You could find a way to get $10 million back to invest in the team by giving him an extension. If he plays poorly, they will be going after a replacement, and they'll have some money to do that or do it in a draft. I don't know if Tristan Wirfs has come out in the top 100 yet. I think they're in the 70s because Jesse Bates just got released last night, and he was 74. So the Falcons have 3 guys. Probably the last of those guys will be. I think Drake London would have a chance, but I don't think he's going to be there yet. How many will be on it next year? That's the question. Chris Lindstrom should be on it next year. Kirk Cousins is still on it. I don't think he shouldn't regress enough to fall off of the top 100. And Jesse Bates was on it. Those 3 should stay on it. Now, can Drake London, Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson, can those guys get on it as well? And Rusty says injury history quarterbacks behind McGarry is scary. McScary is one of the notes that y'all gave him. At least that was the first time I heard it was from this community here, and that's definitely one of the concerns. Definitely one of the storylines coming in is I think Matthew Bergeron's fine. Does he take the next step? Matthew Bergeron might be the answer. Kick him over to right tackle because he was a tackle in college, and he can play tackle. If something happens with McGarry that he doesn't cut it in 2025, again, there's not much dead money on there. McGarry is on the last year of his deal, pretty much. Falcons have options next year. The internal option could be Matthew Bergeron, and then guards are easier to find than tackles. It's just the way it is. The body types are there's just a lot more of them to choose from. That Matthew Bergeron could end up playing offensive tackle in 2025, and then you go try and find another guard. Matthews is getting older. He's not going to play forever, even though it feels like it, and he's been really, really good Atlanta Falcon. So on that note, I'm going to get out of here. We made it an hour, y'all. It's Wednesday. Daniel Flick is over at Flowery Branch right now. He will be at camp, all camp time. While he's there, he's down here for the duration, out for the duration. He's actually even going down to Miami for the combined practices because the guy's a machine. So keep it locked on to falconsi.com. I will see y'all on Monday. But again, make sure you hit like, subscribe, and share because I'm posting content from our sites through these channels every day, all day long. Thanks for being here, everybody. I want to say thank you to my Super Chat superstars like Coach, Mike Harvey, Keith and Ellen Johnson. And if I miss you over on Facebook, I will say thank you after the fact. Sometimes it's hard for me to keep up when it's just me. That's it. That's all I got for y'all. Had a great time today. I appreciate you being here, and I hope you have a great rest of your week. Enjoy the weekend. Enjoy Falcons football. They only go about 5 days before they have preseason games, so they're coming up quick. We will see y'all on Monday. Have a great rest of your week.